Thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you, Dr. Tariq Masoud, our AUC trustee and chair of the search committee for AUC's next president. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Tariq.
Thanks, Dina. It's really a pleasure to be with you and to have this opportunity to update the community on our painstaking search for its next leader.
So speaking of painstaking, can I ask you, Tariq, to let us know where are we in that painstaking process?
Of course. You know, viewers who saw the last episode that you and I recorded, Dina, will have heard me describe the process of our search. But for those who haven't been keeping up with our show this season, let me recapitulate how we got to this point. So first, we put together a search committee of trustees and senior faculty of the university. And I have to say that no finer group of human beings was ever assembled. The collegiality and commitment of these people has been truly inspiring. And we've been working together for a year. And I have to say, throughout that year, I've seen nothing but deep devotion to the AUC on the part of all of these extraordinary people. And that committee began its work by consulting extensively with faculty, staff, students, university administrators, board members, and other key stakeholders in the university to figure out precisely what we should be looking for in our next president. Several of our viewers may have even attended one of the numerous town halls and meetings that we held, you might remember, Dina, in order to collect the views of the community. And those views were ultimately reflected in the job description that we crafted and which we circulated widely in order to attract candidates. Now, at this point, our search firm, Parrott Laver, which is perhaps one of the world's best higher education leadership search firms, then contacted more than 300 prospective candidates, solicited dozens of additional recommendations from prominent figures in the higher education sector, and we also solicited nominations from the AUC community. And we ended up with a list of more than 70 potential candidates for this position. The committee then worked fairly tirelessly through these applications and ultimately identified a little under 20 candidates whom we thought could be eminently appropriate for this appointment. Now, these candidates were then interviewed by the search firm to assess their experience, their fit for AUC, and their motivation for this challenge. And ultimately, we ended up identifying 7 candidates whom we thought the search committee should interview. And that's the stage that we were at when you and I last recorded one of these episodes, Dina. So today, I can report that those interviews resulted in a further winnowing of our pool to 4 extraordinary educators. Now, these 4 then had extensive meetings with key stakeholders across the university, including deans and other senior leaders and faculty members who serve on the Senate's executive committee. Now, the feedback of these university constituents on the candidates at this very sensitive phase in our process was vital. We then took that feedback and re-interviewed the 4 candidates with a view towards identifying whom we would actually bring to Cairo for further meetings with students, staff, faculty, and university leaders. And that's where we find ourselves today. And I just can't exaggerate how important the conversations with the constituents on campus were. Our consultations with the deans and other university leaders and leading faculty really led us to our decision about whom to bring to Cairo. I can't say a lot more about that because I do have to respect the confidentiality of the search, but I can say that there is broad consensus within the committee and with the faculty and academic leadership we consulted about this next step.
Thank you for that, Tariq. So if you don't mind, just so that I understand, you mentioned that the 4 finalists were interviewed beyond, if I understand correctly, they were interviewed beyond the members of the committee, and is that typical?
Thanks, Dina. So I wouldn't call them finalists. Maybe I would have called them semi-finalists. But yes, we did have them have interviews virtually, of course, with key leaders on campus. And you're right to ask about it because it isn't a usual part of a presidential search process. You know, presidential searches are pretty sensitive affairs, not least because we have to take extra precautions to preserve the confidentiality of the candidates. And, there may actually have been some trepidation about bringing 4 candidates to meet more than a dozen people at the university. How are you going to maintain confidentiality? But we were actually very comfortable that our colleagues would maintain the highest standards of confidentiality. And frankly, we believe that we absolutely needed to have their views and their judgments figure in this process in a very real and tangible way. Again, I wish I could discuss more about the nuts and bolts of the committee's work, because I do think our viewers would find it really inspiring. But I know that, again, every one of us found that heightened engagement with the campus and the involvement of key faculty and university leaders at this relatively earlier stage in the presidential search process than is ordinary to be extremely valuable.
Thank you very much, Tariq. And before we close, is there any final thoughts or anything that you wish to add?
Thanks, Dina. I just want to emphasize the real joy of working on this committee. The members of this committee are an extraordinarily busy group of senior faculty and trustees who have a lot of demands on their time. And I just continually found myself inspired by all of the effort that they put into this. I'm really thrilled that we got to work together. I'm sort of sad that our group is now coming to the end of its work, but I'm also extremely excited because I have every confidence that the end result of that work will be something that the AUC community will be excited about and proud of.
And so as we kind of enter the final stretch, is there any indication that you can give our viewers on when we might expect a final decision?
Well, I will say, Dina, that we're certainly closer to an announcement than we were when you and I last recorded one of these viral videos. But I don't want to identify a date certain, not least because in my 46 years on the planet, I've only met a deadline about a handful of times. But as I said, we're now at the stage where we're arranging campus meetings. And my hope is that the search committee will emerge from that with a clear consensus on who the next president will be. That's my full expectation. And then we'll transmit that recommendation of the search committee to the board of trustees, which will hold a formal vote. So all I can say is that we're almost there. And maybe I can say tomorrow will be closer than we were yesterday.
Thank you very much again, Dr. Tariq Masoud, AUC trustee and chair of the Presidential Search Committee. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dina.